Call the Thursday, February 23rd City Commission meeting to order. For the 5 commissioners are present. Mayor said he'd give me his pay for the night, so we're good. First item on the agenda would be the February 9th minutes. Any changes?
I have none.
None.
Stands written. Next item on the agenda would be the January 2023 financial statement. Mr. Deputy City Manager.
Thank you, Colin Belzer, Deputy City Manager. And for the January 2023 monthly financial report, revenues in January totaled $7.6 million, an increase of $968,000 compared to the same period as last year. Notable areas of increased revenue compared to January 22. There was $408,000 in City Commission Capital Reserve. This is from a reimbursement on the early retirement of the Home Depot bonds last year. Franchise fees were up $64,470, particularly for gas and electric. Residential water consumption was up 3%, with business up 16.5%, which translates to a revenue increase of $30,000 when compared to the same period as last year. There were no significant areas of decreased revenue. Expenditures in January totaled $2.9 million, which is an increase of $1.5 million as compared to 22. Notable areas of increased expenditures: airport improvement expenditures were up $44,000 for the purchase of a 2022 Ford F-350 crew cab pickup. Home Depot Economic Development increased $408,000 to reimburse the CCR, as mentioned above. New equipment reserve rose $240,000 for the purchase of a new street sweeper. And then public safety equipment increased $17,300 for the purchase of tasers. Notable areas of decreased expenditures compared to last year. The bulk of the large increase mentioned or decrease mentioned above is for the payment in the amount of $2.5 million for the South Vine project at this time a year ago. Month-to-date general fund sales tax collections were at $741,000, which is an increase of $6,000 as compared to last year. And month-to-date county sales tax collections were $89,637. The total par value of the U.S. Treasuries is $67.1 million with a weighted average yield to maturity of 3.18%, which is up almost 3% from a year ago. And the total of the portfolio certificates of deposit were $4 million with a weighted average rate of maturity of 4.3%. The total balance of the money market account was $4 million with a current yield of 2.2%. Total investments are up $6.8 million.
You want to explain what weighted average percent?
I'll get back to you. An average of all the portfolios for the interest. That's what
Yes.
I'm going. Yeah.
The weighted average based on.
Commissioner
I
Barrett,
think we do.
you want to see if he could try out the new tasers?
I'll let Don know.
You need a motion?
Move approval on the financial statement.
Second.
Got a motion and a second?
Who had the second? Yes, second.
Elena. Any other comments? Okay. All in
I just
favor?
want to know why the businesses, Sean, were up in water usage so much.
We were busy. That's a good thing.
Okay, just checking.
All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Next, citizen comments for non-agenda items.
All those people and nothing to say.
Nobody wants to say anything? Okay. No consent agenda. Next item on the agenda will be Fort Hays Municipal Golf Course Cart Paths award a bid. Mr.
Good
Governor.
afternoon, Commissioners. Jeff Boyle, Director of Parks. I am here this evening to talk to you about the possibility of getting some new cart paths in at the golf course. Of course, our course is the south course, the one across from Frontier Park. Showed you these pictures last week. This gives you a little idea of what we're dealing with. I think many of you have had phone calls and conversations with various folks using the course. It's we have a really nice course, but this is an eyesore for us. They're not in good shape. Every year they just get worse, and I think it's time to get something done with them. A few more pictures. You can see in some of these pictures there's literally no asphalt left. It's gravel and mud. So staff sent out requests for bids. with the assistance of John Brown, of course. What you see here in the red is the area of remaining asphalt cart paths as they exist today. These are the existing path locations. We did bid this as a base project. We also bid an alternate project, which includes 4 different routes. Those routes are in green on the map here. And basically, to give you an example, some of these are, like, for example, this one here, the green used to be where the arrow's at. So at that time, the cart path was in the proper location. The green is now over here. And so what we're finding in this location is it's holding a lot the golfers back time-wise from getting up to the green. So it only makes sense to put that cart path in a proper location since that green has been moved. Same thing down here. You'll notice it kind of bends over into the fairway more. The reason for that is our standard tee box is back here. We did build a new front tee box up front here. And so moving that path to this location would bring those golfers closer to that tee box as well.
Hey, Jeff?
Yes.
How often are the greens moved? Does that happen very often?
Not very often at all. We only rebuild greens if there's a major catastrophe with our existing green. In the case of number 1 that I pointed out, all the drains were crushed on it, and it wasn't draining properly. It was decided at the time that it was cheaper to rebuild beside it than to try and remove everything, so we just kind of left the green mound there and moved the green itself over.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Another example of that would be down here on number 5. Currently, there is the green is right there, and the tee box is right here. The folks are having to park, if I can hold the arrow steady, back over here. And it literally just takes a lot of time, extra time for them to go putt on the green, go back to their cart, get a driver, and then walk over the tee box. So by changing this route, it brings the golf carts right in between the green and the tee. We talked also about number 8. This tee box here is an elevated tee box that was put in. And currently the sides on it are fairly steep. So after a good rainstorm, or if the irrigation has been running, we've had some situations where some folks have fallen down. So what we're requesting here is to move that cart path, have them drive up that, and then actually be parking on the back edge of the tee box. So that would sure help a lot of folks as far as accessing that tee box as well. And then over here on number 6, this green has also moved. This was done in the 90s. I believe it was 97. It used to be farther down the hill here and closer to the cart path. It was moved up and further away from the cart path. So what we're asking here is just simply move that cart path closer to the green. Again, when you're on 7 to 9 minute tee times, every minute on a Saturday is money for the city that we won't get if we're backed up. So that's the purpose for the request on the alternate. And it is the alternate is what we're recommending tonight. Along the cart sheds, there is an area there. I've had a lot of folks call with concerns about how are we going to get our golf carts out of there during construction. And this shows the phased approach that we're planning on using. Phase 1, the yellow would be installed first. And then as you can see, the dark shaded areas are actually the drive lanes along the cart sheds, or through the cart sheds. As you can see, the green and the blue are split. They leave an alley coming out of those cart sheds during the phasing approach. So the golfers would have access to their sheds and be able to get their carts out at all time. Little background, these asphalt cart paths were installed in '99. The commission has approved a lot of the cart paths on the front 9 to be replaced, and they have been replaced, approximately 40% of them. Those have turned out well. We are recommending to use city idle funds to pay for this project. So the base project was $424,000 and some change. We are recommending the alternate, which is about $20,000 more, to take care of those needs that we have as far as the location. We are recommending to use those idle funds and pay that back using the golf course trail fees that are brought in that are put into the golf course improvement fund. We also recommend an annual review of the interest rate, and pay that interest rate according to the average weighted interest on the portfolio. And Kim said he'd like to do that on an annual basis, not just pick a number for year one and then stick with it, just adjust it accordingly. So we are asking to do that. Here are your options. Approve the alternate project for $444,472.13. Direct staff otherwise, or do nothing. And this is our action requested for this item.
I move we approve the low bid from Morgan Brothers Construction for the alternate project in the amount of $444,472.13 and adopt resolution number 2023-004, authorizing and directing the use of city idle funds to pay for the costs of the project with repayment on an annual basis from the revenue received from the cart path trail fees in the Golf Course Improvement Fund.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Berry, a second by Commissioner Jacobs. Any other comments?
I've probably had as many calls and contacts about this item as I've had for a while. People are really grateful that we're doing this. You know, we talk so much about quality of life issues in this community, and we're doing so many things that are outside the actual quality of life things. This is a quality of life issue, and people are loving the golf course, and it's in such good shape. It's a course to be proud of. We shouldn't have them slopping around on cart paths like that. So I appreciate the efforts. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
But whatever you did to be able to take pictures of water on the golf cart paths, I'd like you to keep doing
We
that.
had to turn the irrigation
on. When will this start? And I know you talked last week, somebody was asking me, it would be one hole at a time until they'll shut down. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're talking about starting as soon as they can here in March.
Okay.
They have to be done by November.
Okay.
I think from what I understand, their intent is to get on it starting in March and go until they're completed. They don't want to drag this out throughout the summer here. And yes, we are going to do one hole at a time. The golfers will have signage in place directing them down a fairway to the next hole on whichever hole's being worked on. And then during tournament play, the contractor is not allowed to work during a tournament. So they have to have everything sealed up, barricaded, etc. And all 18 holes will be open. They'll just have to use the fairways as the cart path on whichever hole they're working on.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
You've got places where you can get the heavy equipment across the cart paths without
We do.
destroying
I'm
them.
glad you brought that up. Part of the plan here, part of the bid is to put in random locations some truck crossings. That's 6-inch thick concrete, so it's a couple inches thicker, and it's an 8-foot wide path where it'll designate, the widened area will designate where trucks have to go across. So that way there'll be no questions in 10 years from now, where can we cross at? It's right there in plain sight. So good question.
And you promise not to move the greens again, so that we have to move the cart paths again?
We hope to never have to move a green again.
No promises, so. All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Next item on the agenda, Air Flight Acres, second edition, final plot.
Good afternoon, Jesse Rohr, Director of Public Works. So I got 4 items to discuss with you today. The first 2 relate to each other, and then the third and fourth one relate to each other as well. The first one of those being the consideration of the final plat for Air Flight Acres Second Edition. City staff did receive an application for this plat, and we've worked through the platting process. The location of the property is generally, it is east of Hayes, east of the airport, south of Highway 40. As you can see on the map here, it is adjacent to some other residential developed property. Again, I mentioned it is outside the city limits, and there is no plan to annex this into the city limits at this time. They will not be served by city water or sewer as well. Here's an image of the actual plat of Air Flight Acres Second Edition. It contains 5 lots plus some right-of-way dedication. And you can see the 5 lots there towards the left, and then you can see previously platted properties there to the east of it. The plat does meet the requirements of our Unified Development Code in regard to lot size, setbacks, and various utility requirements. So on this one, note that north is to the left. I know there was a concern last week by Commissioner Barrick of north being to the right, so we did shift it to the left for this meeting.
Thank you, Joseph.
But it does have the aerial image here, and you can see it's vacant farm property at this time. The Utility Advisory Committee did meet on this particular plat. Any concerns or issues that they had were addressed for various easements for future utilities. This item, as do all plats, was before the Planning Commission back in January, and they did approve the plat and recommend it to the City Commission by a vote of 5-0. These will be the options. Your typical plat has these options. You can approve as submitted and recommended by the Planning Commission. You can request any further changes or considerations to the plat, or you could deny the plat. And this is the action requested on the Airflight Acres Second Edition.
I move approval of resolution number 2023-005, accepting the Airflight Acres Second Edition final plat.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Cunningham. Any questions?
Just a question on when you have a fairly defined plat and where did they put the septic fields? He said there's not going to be any city sewer or water.
So all septic systems built within Ellis County do have to get approval through the environmental office, the planning office with Ellis County. These lots are sized such, that would support a septic system. So part of our review and the utility review is reviewed by the environmental office. So they've already looked at this and have determined that the lots are sized accordingly for future septic systems.
Excellent.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda, rezoning request from Agriculture District AL to Residential Suburban District RS on the proposed Airflight Acres Second Edition.
Okay, now for this item, we are talking about the same property. Now for what's considered the approved Airflight Acres Second Edition. And the request is to rezone that property from agriculture to residential suburban. Again, same property east of Hayes. It is the 5-acre lots, or the 5 lots that you just approved in the previous agenda item. The property is contiguous to other residential developed property. It's actually an NC1 district or neighborhood conservation district. It was formerly residential suburban as well. Large lot development, your typical residential type of development that you'd find outside the city limits. The map on the left is the current zoning map for the area. The areas in green, this property included, is zoned agriculture. And then the property just to the east of it, as I mentioned, is NC1 or large lot residential development. The map on the right is our future land use map from the adopted comprehensive plan. It does show the property as low density residential, which is very fitting for the residential suburban that is being considered. With all zonings, we like to show you the various uses that would be allowed if it does get approved by you here today. So the first of the 3 groups is uses by right or permitted uses. So you can see the list is pretty short. These are the uses that are allowed by right on the property if it were to be rezoned RS, residential suburban. The second group are limited uses. The list is a little longer. These are also allowed with just administrative approval, but typically have some conditions that go along with them if someone wished to put one of these uses on the property. And then the last group is uses by exception. Any of these uses would require a public hearing by the Board of Zoning and notification of surrounding property owners before it could be considered. The Planning Commission, as required by state law, did conduct a public hearing to consider this zoning. That was done on January 16th of this year. There were no comments from the public, or I'm not even sure there was anyone present to discuss this zoning at all. And the Planning Commission did vote 5-0 to approve the zoning. This one does have very specific options that are spelled out in state statute for rezoning. You can either approve the zoning as recommended by the Planning Commission. If you see reason to, you can send it back to the Planning Commission with a specific basis for further review by the Planning Commissioners. Or you could deny the rezoning request, and since that would go against the recommendation of the Planning Commission, would require a 2/3 majority vote of the Planning Commission, so, or 80%. So with that, this would be the action requested for this item.
I move that we adopt ordinance number 4024, approving the changes in zoning from agricultural district to residential suburban district for the proposed Airflight Acres second edition.
Second.
A motion from Commissioner Cunningham, second by Commissioner Barrick. Any comments? Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda, Heritage Heights Edition, final plat.
Okay, another plat for your consideration today, and this is the Heritage Heights Edition. This one's located north of Hayes, be just north of 48th Street. Most of you are familiar with the Tractor Supply property, so this will be just to the west of Tractor Supply, again, west of Vine Street and north of 48th. The plat consists of approximately 27 acres. The applicant has proposed 3 large lots, and then there's 2 existing lots with residences currently on them that are part of the plat as well. Here's a closer image of the subject property. As I mentioned, on the lower left-hand portion of the red box here, there are 2 residential homes that are included in the plat at this time. It's likely that they could be absorbed into a larger lot at some point in the future. Access to the property will be primarily from 48th Street. However, as you'll see in the plat, I'll show you in a second, there are some streets being platted, or right-of-way for streets being platted as well. Here's a shot of the preliminary plat. Shows the various contours. It does show, you'll kind of see an angled area going through the center of the plat there. That is a drainage easement that goes through there. There's water available near the property. However, any substantial development of the property would likely require connection and extension of water, city water and city sewer, and therefore annexation as well. If developed, each lot would also be responsible for stormwater management on the property. Don't expect you to see all the fine print here, but it just shows you a shot of the final plat as drafted. Again, there's 5 lots on the property. We kind of have one over here on the west, one large one on the east. There's a kind of medium-sized lot right here, and then the 2 residential lots I mentioned right there. The Utility Advisory Committee did meet on October 4th to discuss this plat. Kind of worked some things out with the developers and the surveyor engineer on the plat, and it does currently, as drafted, meet our requirements for lot size setbacks and various utility requirements. Planning Commission also met on this item. They had a busy January meeting this year. They did consider this plat, and they did approve the plat 5-0. You can choose to approve the plat as submitted. You can request any changes or considerations, or deny the plat. But this would be the action requested on this particular item.
Move approval of resolution number 2023-006, accepting the Heritage Heights Edition final plat.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Barrick. Comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda, rezoning request from Agriculture District AL to Light Industrial District, I-1 on the proposed Heritage Heights Edition.
Okay, the last of my items here, and this is, again, pertaining to the same property we just approved the plat on, and this is for rezoning from ag to light industrial for the Heritage Heights Edition. Again, same subject property, north of 48th, west of Vine, near the Tractor Supply area. The city did receive an application from the owners to request the rezoning from ag to light industrial. Again, the property is about 27 acres, and the entire area is being requested to be rezoned to light industrial. Again, I'll show you the zoning map and future land use map for this area. The zoning map, you can see the property is zoned ag currently in the green area there. It is surrounded on the south and the east with commercial. There's more ag property to the north and the west. Again, the request is to zone it to light industrial. And over on the right hand, you'll see the future land use map out of the comprehensive plan. It's shown as urban reserve, which basically means it's adjacent to city within the developable area of the city and is logical development for city growth. The light industrial, we have what's called a compatibility matrix table within our comprehensive plan, and it does rate the requested zoning of light industrial to urban reserve a 4 out of 5, or almost completely compatible with each other. Again, I'll list the various uses, the 3 types of uses. These again are permitted by right. So once rezoned light industrial, any of these uses are fair game for the property. So you'll see there's quite a list, everything from general office type uses to retail, both lighter retail and what we call heavy retail, which might be truck and implement dealerships, things like that. Museums, libraries, showrooms, hospitals. So the list is very extensive once we get to an I-1 zoning. The limited uses also are allowed, but may have some considerations or requirements by staff, although they are, again, approved administratively. Slightly different and more intense uses than what you saw on the previous list. And then the last group would be uses by exception, and these would only be allowed, again, after board zoning, public hearing, and notification of surrounding properties. Planning Commission also on this item did review it and did vote 5-0. I believe there were no comments from the public. There were a couple property owners in attendance, but I believe they were actually the applicants on the property itself. Again, the statutory options that you have are to approve it as recommended by the Planning Commission, send it back to the Planning Commission, or deny the request. The action requested would be to approve the zoning as submitted.
Thought you were getting ready to. Okay. I move to adopt ordinance number 4025, approving the change in the zoning from agricultural district to light industrial district for the Heritage Heights addition.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Cunningham, second by Commissioner Barrick. Comments?
I just like that museums and libraries are light industrial.
Light industrial, that's right.
That fits you very well, doesn't it? I actually, I think this is, it seems like an ordinary thing that we just passed, but I think this is huge for the future of Hayes growth, and it's kind of exciting to see what, it ain't going to happen overnight, but what may happen in the next few years. So I think this is exciting for us, or our community, what just happened there. So, okay, anything else? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 4-0.
Thank you, Jesse.
Next item on the agenda, water conservation updates and 2023 programs.
Love having Holly.
Yes, we do.
Love
Good afternoon.
having Jesse.
Not really.
We kind of like having Jesse.
He's not even listening to
It's
it.
Crispin we're worried about.
I just want to make sure that Holly's picking on Sean for their increased water use.
Good afternoon. Holly Dickman, Water Conservation Specialist. I've never had so much business before I got up here, so I was extra nervous waiting. So anyway, it's always nice to be here once a year to give you the update. And as I've done many times in the past, I go back in time a little bit just to show where we were about just over a decade ago. In February, this time of year, we were abnormally dry. And as we all recall, back in that day, by August, we were in exceptional drought. So things can change very, very quickly. And I always like to show that to people when I talk to them about water issues in our area. Here's where we stand today. We are already in this situation. We are in extreme drought here. But as that previous slide showed how quickly things can change, we can quickly change back to the positive side. So I'm hoping for that this spring. But unfortunately, the seasonal drought outlook for our area shows that drought should persist or may persist. And this is through the end of May. So, I hope this is incorrect. I hope that we get some storms this spring and we will get some rainfall. But unfortunately, it looks like we are predicted to persist with our drought. 2022 was a below average year for precipitation. We had good years for about 5 years, and then last year we were certainly below. And this is the amount reported by the Ag Research Center here in Hayes. If you look at the countywide data, it's actually a little lower than this, and it puts us back in those 2012 era amounts, around 14 inches of rainfall for the year. So currently for this year, we are on track for the year. But when you start out in extreme drought, that doesn't really mean a whole lot. So we're hoping for some moisture. Moving on to 2022 rebate programs. The toilet rebate program remained the most popular program that we have, but the numbers were down this year. This is probably the lowest it's been. Well, I know it's the lowest it's been since I've began with the city. Why that is, I don't know, but we had 202 toilets replaced this year, with an average gallon per flush of 1.1. I will say with inflation, I think, the highest rebate we provide is $150 back on the 0.8 gallon per flush toilet. That used to cover the entire cost of the toilet, and it no longer does. So inflation raised the price on those toilets. So that may be part of it. I'm not quite sure. Washing machine rebates. Again, the numbers are down this year. We had 77 total washing machines replaced in 2022. Last year was 102. And all of these now are the 3.2 integrated water factor or less. So there's no doubt that those are high efficient washing machines, but we are down on those rebate numbers just a little bit this year. Turf conversions in 2022, I will say with it being a drought year, there was more interest. I did notice I had more phone calls. I did more pre-inspections. Did everyone qualify? No, but I certainly talked to a lot more people about turf conversions. And so we had 9 total conversions in 2022 that were completed. This was up just a little bit over 2021, but I have pre-inspections that are still pending. So they have a year to get that conversion done. And so I still have over 20,000 square feet pending for that conversion. So I'm hoping those follow through and they get completed this year. I always want to mention new things at this time since we're talking about rebates. So new for 2023, when we're talking about outdoor water use, we're going to try these 2 new rebates. One is for smart irrigation controllers, and the other one is for rain sensor or rain shutoff devices on automatic irrigation systems. So all of the details of these rebates are online, and I've started to promote them a little bit. Did a press briefing here just a couple weeks ago about this. So these are 2 new rebates that we're going to pilot this year and see how they go. We'll provide $100 back on the cost of a smart irrigation controller and $100 back on the cost and installation of a rain sensor.
Holly, how does that compare to actual price of those 2 items?
It's pretty comparable. You can find a wide range of costs for those things. So for a smart irrigation controller, you can purchase, a more simplistic one from Amazon or Home Depot or one of those places for about $89 or less even in some places, or they can be quite complicated and get up in $200 range or more. So.
It was interesting when you were commenting about the toilets and the washers. When I was out at Home Depot last week and having conversations about this with some of the guys out there, people are disappointingly making conscious decisions not to get the 0.8 flush. That is a real disappointment, and I hope that people think and rethink. And they, at Home Depot, they said they encouraged them highly to do the rebatable one, but they too knew it was down.
Yeah. And I know that initial cost might be a shock factor, but overall with the rebate and then the water savings, I think it is a benefit to have that lower cost that lower.
Is that something, do you think we need to adjust our rebates on that? Where in the past it covered it, now it doesn't? I mean, do you think, I know you don't.
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I know we've discussed that, but we haven't moved to that yet. So something to consider possibly. moving back to the showerhead program, which has been in place for many, many years, we did distribute a lot more showerheads this year. I don't know what happened in 2022 compared to 2021, but we had, according to inventory, a lot more showerheads distributed, which is great. And I don't know if that's because I talked about them more on the radio, which I'll talk about in a minute, but we had more distributed. I know we had a couple of landlords come in and they pick up maybe bulk quantities to replace with some of their apartments and things. So I know that did happen. Moving on to education and outreach, I show this slide pretty much every year, but it's communication, essentially, in all ways, shapes, and forms. And so I show this laundry list of things that I try to accomplish every year. And I can't cover everything, obviously, in the time we have, but I'll cover some of the highlights. Traditional media, digital media, advertising, radio, TV, those sorts of things, certainly a big part of our education and outreach efforts. You can see the numbers there. The digital media is focused just to 67601 zip code. So just so you're aware of that. New for 2022, we were a studio sponsor for KHAZ. So every morning we are a studio sponsor for the morning show with Teresa Trapp. And so they will play our ads, and do little clips on water conservation. And then every Thursday I am on the radio live with her at about 8:10. So we did 52 live interviews in 2022. I did all of those except for 2 where Jason Riegel filled in for me when I was out of town or gone for some other reason. So that was new for us, but I think that really has a benefit in some ways there. Social media, we're continuing to build on these social media platforms. Every year our followers go up, and I think that's a good thing. So we are continuing to build on that. Haven't reached beyond this too much. We're not doing TikTok yet, even though everyone's on TikTok, but we haven't gone there yet. Talked about that last year. And these are just a few of the examples of some of the social media things that we have done in the past year here. If you're not following us on social media, please do so. It's at WaterSmartHays, so you can keep up with what we're doing. As long as I'm not super, super busy, I try to keep up with social media, but if you don't see anything from me for a while, it means I'm pretty busy doing other things.
They're very creative.
Yes, they are.
Who did them? Did you do? Good job, Holly. They really are creative.
Thank you. Moving on to the 4-H Water Ambassador Program. This is a program, if you recall, or maybe you haven't heard of this program before. It's a partnership program that began in 2021 with the entities shown here on this T-shirt. This is a leadership opportunity for teenagers 13 and up here in Ellis County and Barton County. So we partner with the Cottonwood Extension District. And we did hold a training again this year for water ambassadors. Actually, I have 2 of my water ambassadors here today. Girls, if you want to stand up. Lizzie Viner and Marissa Wassinger, and I've been asked to take their picture by the 4-H agent. So they are 2 of our water ambassadors that have gone through the training and helped us with some of our educational events. This past year with the training, it was great because we had the water ambassadors help train the new water ambassadors. So that's the whole goal of the program, is to get the kids to learn, figure out how to do some of these activities, learn about water, and then go and teach others, and that's what they've been doing. The current, or I should say the former, water ambassadors got to go on the tours again, and the comment was, well, it just made more sense this time. So
Sure.
The first time it's a little overwhelming, and then the second time it made a little bit more sense. So I think you guys were happy to go on, or Marissa went on the tour twice, so she was happy to have that opportunity again. We always hold the training here in Hayes, and then we go down to the Cheyenne Bottoms Wetlands Education Center where we do the second half of the training. And so this is some of the images from those trainings where the kids are learning to do different activities. And then, of course, we put them to work at our events, and they go out and teach others. And so here's just some images from library program, World Water Day Fun Fest, some of those types of things where the kids are educating others in the community. So, and this was a picture from just in December when we had our program at the library, our Winter Water Wonders program. We were honored with an award for this program back in April from the Kansas Association for Conservation and Environmental Education, or KC, back in April in Manhattan. So we were honored to receive that for this program. School presentations, it's kind of strange to be talking about last year's school presentations when I'm in the midst of doing a lot of school presentations presentations for this year, but certainly had the opportunity to go out and talk with lots of kids last year, promote the water poster contest. And then a unique thing that happened in October was I got to partner with Ellis County Farm Bureau, and they always do their Ag in the Classroom programs, and they got to have water conservation as the topic in October. So they called me, and we worked up this little video, and this was shown to over 800 students in Ellis County. And I still have kids today come up to me and say, well, I saw you in that water video. So they remember me. And my daughter happens to be a second grader or third grader this year, so she was one of them, and all of her friends are telling her that they saw her mom. So also got to talk to some Girl Scouts, had the opportunity to repay our favors with the Kansas Wetlands Education Center and go down there and talk to 320 second graders there. And then Hayes High hosted the FFA Green Hand Conference this year in Hayes. So they asked me to come out and speak to FFA members from across the Northwest area about water conservation and water topics here in our area. Another unique thing, I got to work with Eagle Communications and develop 4 videos. They needed somebody for their green and growing program, and I said, okay, I'll do it. But they produced these videos, and now we have access to them, can do whatever we want with them. So I took that opportunity to do that, and so this was promoting water smart landscaping and talking about those topics. Fix a Leak Week is a campaign that we do through EPA WaterSense partners every year. We continued with our leak detective program where we distribute toilet dye tabs to every elementary school student in Hayes. And thankfully I have great coworkers and supportive team to help me staple all of those dye tabs to the instruction sheets. And then if the kids return their little slip saying that they tested their toilets and they checked for leaks and their observations, they get entered into a prize drawing, 2 at each school, and this is just some of the prize winnings that they can win at those schools. World Water Day Fun Fest has become a very popular event. We held this at Big Creek Crossing this year. It was a different location, but it's just a 2-hour event where we have various booths set up to educate the public about water and water conservation. The water ambassadors were there with booths. We have the water treatment plant guys there talking about water treatment. We've got wastewater treatment. You know, Jason comes with his microscope and his bugs. And so we try to teach everybody about water here in Hayes. And the weather was not great, but we still had over 250 attend that event last March. And then the water poster contest. We had the biggest year ever for the water poster contest. We had 337 posters, which is huge. We held the award ceremony at the library, and we are in the midst of promoting this year's contest. And I knew Water Smart Wally had made the big time when he started showing up in the posters. We had several posters last year where Water Smart Wally was being featured. So I thought that was great. And then we put those posters up, of course, at Spring Art Walk so people can view them. And they are up throughout the month of May, and then we go ahead and display them at the Ellis County Fair later on. This year we sponsored a Larks game. This was our outreach event of the year for sports, and so we decided to have Water Smart Wally, and we've got Shatola, the stormwater dog, throwing out the first pitch, and then we distributed koozies and some other information there at that event. And of course, those mascots are always hugely popular with the kids. Go Truck Go, we go where the people are. People are definitely at Go Truck Go. There was over 600 people that attended Go Truck Go this year. So we try to have a booth there if at all possible. Water Smart Wally was there. And again, we partner with Stacy Minson and Stormwater to promote all things water conservation and water quality. This year, last year, I was talking about Stacy Minson and I presented at Las Vegas at Water Smart Innovations. This year, we got the opportunity to present that same presentation at the Governor's Water Conference. So we were there to do that. And then the city of Hayes had a booth at the water conference. And so we were available to talk to anyone that wanted to talk to us about water in Hayes. And then we continued with our partnership with the Chamber of Commerce here in Hayes with the Welcome Home Bucket program. And we provide the buckets and water conservation and water quality information. And then those are filled with all sorts of other items, and then they get distributed through City Hall as the city clerk's office. This year, 2022, 154 buckets were distributed. And as usual, there's a million other things that we could talk about. There's Lizzie and Marissa smiling again. But we just don't have time, and I know you have a huge agenda, so we will move on. But continuing to build on what we already do, I think drought certainly brings the topic of water to everyone's mind just a little bit more than it would in a normal year in Hays, Kansas. So we'll continue to work towards those efforts, keep spreading the message, and find new ways to work with people in the community. So if you have any questions, I'll take those now.
I was just going to say, I think you do a great job of making education not boring. I mean, it's a lot of times when you're a kid in school, you're like, oh gosh, here we go, and it's interesting. You know, you watch your social media, and it's you learn from it. You know, I'll be driving down the street and I hear it on the radio, and it's good stuff. And I appreciate what you do. I love having the water ambassadors. You know, having them get involved so they can hopefully teach their friends. And so you do a great job. I hope you keep up the good work because it's good.
Thank you.
We'd be hard pressed to find anybody that does a better awareness program than you do, Holly. Year over year, it just gets better and better, and we hear about it from everybody, and that's the reason we are where we are with water conservation. So I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda on the R9 update, Keith Harmony will be speaking to us about just the R9.
I'm not Keith. You're right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Crispin. Same topic.
Okay. I'm like, wait a second.
Name is Jeff Crispin, Director of Water Resources. Just a little bit of history. February of last year, we came before Commission. Dr. Keith Harmony was with us to do a presentation. So this is a similar presentation. Basically, it's an update of 2022, how 2022 went, and then recommendations for 2023. For reference, I only have about 6 slides before I pass it on to him. But for reference, this visual kind of gives you an idea of where the ranch is on a map. Straight 70 miles south of Hays, south of Kinsley, in Edwards County. The ranch itself, those are the borders of the ranch. It's approximately 7,000 acres in size, sits along the south side of the Arkansas River in southwestern Edwards County, and it's approximately 5 miles just to the south of Kinsley itself. This is kind of a shortened timeline. We've been working on this for quite a while, but this talks about, kind of gives you a little bit of the history of our conversion of crops to native grasses. Back in 2007, the city began taking circles out of service with different programs such as EQIP. Throughout that process, we come kind of full circle back up to 2015, 16, and 17. We really expanded on those efforts. In 17, we took all remaining circles out of service. In 18 and 2019, we took out all the infrastructure for irrigation that was on the land. We took that out of service, so that has all been removed. And then we hired a range specialist, Dr. Keith Harmony, back around 2020, and he's been advising us since. This is a visual that kind of talks about those years or shows you those years, approximate years that we took them out of service. Yellow is 2015 on the map, so there was quite a few in 2015. Orange was 2016, and then the remaining ones in red were taking out in 2017. So luckily, Holly talked about weather and rain, and 19, 20, 21, we had some good rains throughout the state that kind of helped us, so we were kind of at the right timing there. So my last slide is to bring Keith up. Keith is a range research scientist with KSU. He's stationed here at the State Agriculture Research Center, and he will come up and give you a little bit of an update on what's been going on with the property.
Thank you, Mr. Crispin.
Thank you.
Well, howdy there and good afternoon, Commissioners. I am Keith Harmony, and so I'm glad to be here again to give you an update about the assessment that I had this past season on the R9 grass overseeding project over the course of the last several years. So as far as my role in this whole process, I was brought on board to basically give an assessment of the success of the conversion so far, and also to do some overall grassland health and grazing management advice on the property. And in looking at this project, the overarching goal of the landscape management on the property was to convert the land from monoculture crops to a diverse grassland system, similar to what it would have been hundreds of years ago. And so in doing so, of course, on this sandy soil, as one can imagine, where there's less water holding capacity than on other types of soils, and in an area where there are hot and dry periods of the growing season, you can imagine that this is not a fast process because there's complications involved. But anyway, that's the goal, is to get this property converted into a grassland system. Now, this is a couple pictures of some satellite imagery of the property in 2018 and 2021. In 2018, on the left, in the lower left-hand portion of the image over here, according to this image and also from what Jeff showed just a little bit ago, those circles were converted to grassland prior to the ones that I have circled in yellow. Those yellow circles, or the ones in yellow there, show that the lighter color of those circles in the imagery are depicting that some of the soil surface is being exposed and that light sand is being exposed there, and they really stick out from the rest of the landscape, especially the native grass pastures that are directly south of the property. In 2021, you can see that those really light circles kind of disappear, and that's because as of that time period, all the circles had been overseeded at least one time, and there was some sort of vegetative cover on those circles. However, one thing that needed to be done was to assess what that vegetation cover was, and that's where I came into participating in here, is that I was charged with assessing the establishment success or failure on these circles. And in 2020, which was my first year of doing the assessment, I basically grouped all the circles into 6 categories of success, from very poor all the way up to excellent. And with over 40 circles on the property, basically it ran the whole range of success on those circles, all the way from very poor with lots of weedy cover, all the way up to excellent grass stands that already are very productive and usable for grazing. So anyway, I came on board to assess the establishment of those. Now, I won't go into the methods that I used to assess that, because I did that in my prior summary to y'all last year. But one thing that I wanted to bring up is that in 2021, after my assessment of 2020, I had recommended that 4 of the very poor rated circles to be overseeded in 2021. And in doing the assessment at the end of that growing season, those 4 circles were rated as either good or excellent establishment. And going back and looking at those circles this year, 2 of those remained in what I called excellent establishment, and the other 2 had slipped back into what I called marginal establishment. Basically, I think because of the dry conditions, the drought year that we had. At the start of this season, I had recommended that 4 other circles be overseeded that were in what I call the poor category. And after those circles were overseeded this year and assessing those, basically they remained in poor, and a couple of them had moved up into the marginal category. But overall, not near the success that we had in 2021. And basically that's because of the severe drought year that we had. So it wasn't very surprising. So an example of what I saw on those circles that remained in excellent establishment from 2021 to 22. On the left, you can see those circles. Those are indicating some small seedlings that were not very large in 2021. And on the right is the same pivot, same circle. And you notice that those plants are more robust, a lot more stems, tillers to them. Tillers or stems, you could probably equate them as being the same in this case, and more leaf material. Now, after the second year of growth, I expect there to be even more robust and a lot more yield to these. But because of the year that we had, I was basically just happy and satisfied that they even survived more than anything. So to me, I thought it was a good indicator to me that these plants are going to be persisting over time, that they were able to survive this year that we had. So this diagram shows my first assessments that I did in 2020, and then reassessments that I have done by the end of 2022. The main thing I want to point out on here is that we started out with several circles with red and orange as indicators, which to me were the very poor and poor category. Whereas in the diagram on the right, you see most of those have disappeared. But we have several more that are in the yellow category, which I call the marginal category, which indicates that there's been some improvement over time, but there's still room for a lot more improvement on some of these circles, which with time and management, we should be able to get some full establishment on these. So in looking at the start of the 2022 growing season, it was predicted that basically our region was going to have equal chances of above or below average precipitation. In reality, what happened was that for the April, May, June time period, we were 36% below average, and for the year, we were 51% below average at the R9 ranch. And this came off of a weather station that's on the High Plains Climate Data Center that is 4 miles directly west of the R9 ranch. So it's a weather center that's not too far away. So I think those data points are pretty good, being 36 and 51% below average. This is what is anticipated for the outlook for this year. Notice that it doesn't look a lot different, other than there is an area that's expected to be dry just to our west. And because of what we experienced this past growing season and what this outlook is showing, I'm not recommending any more seeding to be done this year until we get through the dry spell that we're in, until we overcome this dry cycle. Now, one thing that I did notice in walking through several of the circles this past year is that I saw several plants in some of the circles that had a dry, or not a dry, but a gray coloration to them, like that center photograph there and the one on the right. That's an indicator of dead plant material, usually from growth that occurred the year before and had gone through a winter season, so it's lost all its coloration. Usually at the end of a growing season, you'll see vegetation like what's on the left, where there's tans, reds, brown hues to them coming out of that dead gray material. And in this year, in doing my assessments, there were several plants that I saw that did not have any indicators of new growth coming out of them this year. So next season is going to be really important to go back and look at a lot of this area to see, if they're going to be recovering from the drought, the exceptional drought situation that they incurred this year. So I was happy to see the seedlings survive in the areas that were overseeded, that were successful and remained in excellent condition. But in some of the circles that have some of this evidence of old growth and no new growth, I'm a little bit concerned about those, and hopefully those are going to going to show up next year with some new growth if we get some precipitation back. Even though 2022 was dry, there were some circles that had evidence of weed pressure on them, most notably sunflower and Russian thistle. Now, sunflower actually can be an important forb for conservation and for wildlife habitat. So more of a concern is the Russian thistle that's present on some of the property. So I'll probably be recommending to have some of the circles treated for or controlled for Russian thistle this year. One thing I did notice was that in the areas of the R9 that are already established and set up for grazing, those circles had much less weed pressure on them than the circles that are not set up for that yet. And so one thing to do in the future that can really help the weed pressure on the property is to get more of the area set up for grazing access so that animals on the property can utilize some of those weeds as forage, and also the foot action and trampling can help keep some of those in check. So that's something to do in the future. Another thing I want to bring up that came to fruition last fall was that the lesser prairie chicken in Kansas was listed as a threatened species according to the Endangered Species Act. And this is important to the R9 ranch because, as you can see in the inset there, the R9 ranch is an area that is very important for connecting the mixed grass population of the lesser prairie chicken to the short grass population of the prairie chicken, which is the mixed grass portion is the area that's bordered by red, and the short grass is the area that's bordered by blue. And that one finger of the mixed grass area that goes through the R9 ranch is very important in order to have connectivity of grasslands so those populations can interconnect over time. At least that's the goal. And these birds need a grassland habitat for them to survive. So the R9 is important for that. But I also bring this up because of the listing in the Endangered Species Act. It is illegal to harm or harass, either intentionally or unintentionally, those birds in their habitat. And grazing is a practice that unintentionally could harm or harass the birds, either by stepping on nests, flushing them, interrupting their daily activities somehow. And so as of March 27th, it will be illegal for grazing to take place in lesser prairie chicken habitat areas unless an approved grazing plan is in place that is approved by a third-party grazing planner that is approved by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And so the R9 being in this lesser prairie chicken habitat area needs to have a grazing plan in place from an approved third-party provider. With my position at K-State, we also have property that's in this area, and we have to do the same thing. And just this week, I applied to be a third-party approved grazing planner with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service so that I can write and approve my own plans as part of our K-State Research Center. And in doing that, if I am approved, I would also be able to do the same for the R9. So I just wanted you all to be aware of that because that is a pretty significant happening that took place for producers throughout western Kansas.
So they think grazing cattle actually affects a negative way to
Well,
prairie chicken?
Well, it does affect them. The main reason to have a plan is that so grazers are not in violation of the Endangered Species Act by the act of grazing itself. It basically exempts them from that harm or harass portion by having a plan in place. They realize that grazing will affect it, but they want producers to be protected. And that's one way to do it is by having this approved grazing plan.
Thank you.
And so for 2023, I plan on doing basically some of the same activities that I've been doing the past couple of years. And we'll give you all an update again in a future commission meeting. Any questions for me?
I guess more of a review is why we're doing the natural grasses down there. I know you've explained to us in the past, but just,
Why are we doing natural grasses?
yes.
Well, establishing these areas back to native grasslands or native species and grasslands in general, there's a couple of basic items that this will help with. One is erosion control compared to crop grounds. The sandy soil is highly mobile in wind, and having a continuous grassland cover on the property will help to reduce that erosion potential. It also will help with retention of water. Even though it is a sandy soil and heavy rain events, you still can get some runoff. And having a continuous grassland on that soil will help to retain that water and keep it in place. And so long term, I think it's conservation-wise, it's more friendly to the environment than a row cropping system on those lands.
And the natural grasses use a lot less, I want to say this, water than if you had crops on there, correct?
The native grasses that we find here in Kansas are what are called warm season grasses. That's the term used. And they're more water use efficient during the hot and dry periods of the year than what are called C3 grasses, which is also the main reason why you have the lawn conversion
Right.
program in the city.
Thank
So
you.
basically the same principle.
I would add there's a couple more reasons that we did it internally. As a farm, it was marginally productive for us. If you owned it and it was your source of livelihood, you might make a decent living with it, but when you own it and you're paying a third party to be the tenant and do the farming, a lot of your profits go to there. So City of Hazen Russell, sometimes we broke even, sometimes we didn't. Sometimes we were able to put a little money ahead, sometimes we lost money on that. So marginally productive. So when the opportunity came with use it or lose it repealed in 2015, we were able to start decommissioning the circles. And so water quantity is one, the water that we're not pumping on crops that, can sort of stay in the aquifer, but also water quality. If you're not putting nitrates and other fertilizers down, we've seen significant water quality improvements on the property. And since this is a municipal water source for us, we want the best water we can get and not have to seek advanced treatment if necessary.
So you're saying that, I know you're suggesting spraying, for the weed control. How does that affect the water?
I couldn't tell you. That's a Keith question.
Well, application of any sort of herbicide or pesticide has potential to affect some water quality. The thing about establishing these all in continuous grasslands is that the proportion of land that would be treated in any one year potentially is much, much less than with circles that are in crops. And when you get the goal is once these are fully established and productive grasslands, that almost none would have to be ever applied again.
Is there any, I know the soil is very sandy in that whole area, but is there soil profile differences between some of the different circles that correlate to whether they're rebounding better, or is it just strictly drought?
There are differences in minor differences in some of the soil profiles of the circles, but it is really hard to predict what is causing the difference in establishment of those. It could have been prior crop usage, residual herbicides, could have been the time of year that it was seeded compared to when a rainfall event occurred. So it's really hard to predict a correlation between success and failure on those circles with just the soil itself, because there are other factors that could be involved there.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see. I know that I've seen problems other places when you choose the wrong time to reseed and you hit a drought. You're not going to have a whole lot of success, but the fact that you have some ground cover that actually helps with the drought by actually not having soil just be bare to the air, because that loses a lot of water. So But yeah, probably on a continuous, next couple years even of drought, probably not a lot of faith in reseeding for the next year or two, but it's good to get some ground cover because that actually helps.
Yeah. The ground cover is definitely going to help keep evaporation from occurring and going to capture more of the water that does fall.
My question is, like with the grazing, is and the lesser prairie chickens. So is a grazing plan, like some grazing is good because it gets rid of the weeds and keep. Or prairie chickens do better with just the natural grasses, or they do all right with weed cover too?
Well, the prairie chickens will use some crop area for food, for seed source actually, but they have a wide range of habitat requirement, from very short areas all the way up to really thick grassland areas to cover all their needs throughout their cycle. When they like having short, almost no vegetation, all the way up to when they nest. They want some heavy ground cover. But when they're bringing up their broods, those chicks need some areas with gaps in between vegetation so they can move around and collect seeds and forage and get insects. So they have a wide range of habitat that they use.
I just didn't know if a little bit of grazing keeps the weeds down and that does them better, as well as while the too much grazing interrupts them and steps on nests and things. So is there sort of a balance there?
Well, there will be a balance, but if you're concerned about the grazing plan that occurs, it's not a grazing plan that they require to be for creating lesser prairie chicken habitat. It's a grazing plan basically to protect the grazer from any incidental harassment that may occur to the chicken. It's not to create habitat. It's basically to keep the grassland habitat there in the first place and just to protect the owner of the grazer. That's my interpretation of why they're wanting the grazing plan.
Excellent.
I'm not sure if that answered your question.
No, I just didn't know if the harassment, potential was more than the potential good that you get by keeping the weeds out by having the grazing going on.
Well, the forbs that would be in a circle are actually beneficial to the prairie
Gotcha.
chickens because forbs in the flowers attract insects, and those insects are one of the food sources for them.
Right. Sure. I just like to see. I like seeing the progress over the last 3 years.
Yeah, it's very good. Any questions for Keith?
I just want him to come back and report after we've had a whole bunch of rain.
Yeah.
Here's some new words.
I'd have prettier pictures.
Yeah. Thank you, Keith, very much.
Thank you very much.
Toby will give an update for us.
Toby Doherty, City Manager. I will keep my update relatively brief. Before I talk about where we're at with the R9 regulatory development, I would like to introduce a couple people that you know, but you don't know in their soon-to-be current capacity. We are still working to bring a design contract to the commission in late April, early May, and that's when we're going to get seriously rolling on the work of designing the project to build a well field and bring water up from the well field. Knowing my limitations and knowing what type of assistance we need, I've had discussions with John Brown, our current project manager. John has been Assistant Public Works Director. He's been project manager for several years now. John is going to be transitioning to the R9 project manager, and he's going to oversee this project to make sure that the engineers and the land acquisition people and everybody involved are working and playing nicely. And he is eyes and ears that we need on the project. And so with that, I would like John to come up and say a couple words.
Thank you, Toby, for the introduction. Commissioners, I am John Brown, Project Manager. The R9 wellfield development and the pipeline construction is an exciting project that is important to the citizens of Hayes and to me personally. In fact, it's important enough to keep me from retiring at the end of this year. So During my 23 years with the City of Hayes, I have been involved in lots of different projects. One of my favorites was a major improvement to the Smoky Hill well field that was completed back in 2009, 2010. And now I appreciate the opportunity to work on another significant water project. And I'm honored to be part of the team that will provide long-term water security to Hayes, Russell, and the surrounding area. Questions for me?
We're happy to have you.
Congratulations, John. And I'm telling you, to give up retirement for this, you got to love it. And so we really appreciate it. I was always afraid every time I saw you, you were going to be announcing retirement. So I'm really glad to see this happening. Congratulations.
Might be stuck with me for a few more years.
That's
yes,
good.
so.
That's a good thing.
We'd love to have you. Thank you.
So up until a couple years ago, we have been mostly absentee owners of the property. And it's easy to be an absentee owner when 90% of the property is being farmed by somebody else. It's harder to be an absentee owner when you're trying to convert it back to native grass. So between 2015 and 2020, our goal was to try to establish a healthy ecosystem down there. And I think we're working there. As Dr. Harmony pointed out, we have some work to do, but I think we're getting close. Now we are at a point where we have to be an active owner. We have a piece of property that we have to look to create a well field on. We are designing a project. We have responsibilities as owners with the property. There are things we need to be doing. There are ways we can make money off the property. We have been in discussion with the state about some sort of a public use area. And so given where we're at in the project itself, now is the time to bring somebody on as a manager. And so what I would like to do is introduce Chris Smith. Chris is currently a park superintendent. He worked for Division of Wildlife and Parks for the state for several years before he came to work for us. And he will be assuming the role of R9 property and wellfield manager. So he will help establish the position of R9 property manager. He will help out during the design process. He will help oversee the day-to-day management of that, and then negotiate with the state on what type of a public access use this would be. So I'd like to introduce Chris then.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Chris Smith, and I'm currently the Park Superintendent, but I'm soon to be the R9 Manager. I've not had the opportunity to meet most of you recently, or yeah, there's some new ones. So I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about myself. As a young age, I was somewhat of an outdoor recreation enthusiast with an appreciation for the natural resources and an interest in the natural resources that the state of Kansas has to offer. These interests led me to Kansas State University, where I was able to get a degree in a Bachelor of Science degree in agriculture with an emphasis in parks and natural resource management. And for the past 30 years, I've worked in this field. I don't want any comments, Jeff. He's always giving me a hard time that I'm older than him by like 4 months. As Toby mentioned, in my previous employment with Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, I was a Cedar Bluff State Park Manager. And I was responsible for the operations, maintenance, and developments of land and water-based recreational facilities, as well as for the natural resources consisting of the native grasslands and woodlands within the state park system and 2 private cabin areas. My responsibilities as a state park manager and as the park superintendent have had a lot of similarities yet differences, but these experiences in both of these positions will be a benefit to the R9 Ranch Manager position. So I think it's going to work out well for me and for the city. Though it was a difficult decision to transfer from the Parks Department, I'm looking forward to my work with the Water Resources Department. I appreciate my coworkers with the Parks Department, and I'm proud of the accomplishments that we've made. Gosh dang. The R9 project is exciting to me, and that it'll set a precedent for Kansas water law. It will not only benefit the cities of Hayes and Russell, but will have the potential to benefit communities in similar situations in the future. It's kind of a big deal. I'm also, like John, honored to be a part of this team tasked with establishing the wellfield system and the transfer system. I look forward to managing the land associated with the project, and I believe that in addition to the well field, I believe the ranch has the potential to provide some additional benefits to the city of Hayes, Edwards County, and the surrounding communities. That was a pretty short summary for 30 years. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Chris, I just want to congratulate you. I'm excited when I heard you'd be taking this position. I'm excited for you, not only for you, but the city of Hayes. And I guess my biggest thing for the residents of Hayes and our region, if you didn't think we were serious, we wouldn't be doing this, without these two positions. So thank you guys, and I'm more excited to be a commissioner on the water project now than I ever have been, and with guys like you leading it, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen sooner than later.
Exciting.
Yeah, it is. So thank you both very much.
I think one thing I wanted to comment on, Chris, were your last couple words, and I think it's so important that everybody understands that we're not out here for just Hayes, Kansas. We're out here for Ellis County, Russell County, and you comment about Edwards County. And I think collaborating, being able to work with all three communities is going to be very strong, and I think you'll do a great job. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Jeff, does that mean you got to do 2 jobs now?
3.
3 jobs?
I forgot to mention that Chris and John are both working for free.
Oh. Even better.
All right, moving on. I have just a quick update on where we are at. This is the timeline for the transfer proceedings for the regulatory process. The first pre-hearing conference started on February 15th, and the pre-hearing conference is a legal proceeding that sets the terms of the hearing. So this is where the lawyers, Don, the lawyers get to determine how the rules of the game are going to be during the hearing. So we spent about an hour and a half on February 15th talking about this, and the pre-hearing can go for 45 days. It was scheduled to continue on March 3rd, and it may conclude on March 3rd, or it may be continued at another time. So it can actually continue up to March 30th if the judge in the case would like it to. So it just matters if the attorneys can get everything wrapped up with the judge on March 3rd, whether or not it continues. As you can see by statute, the hearing actually has to begin not less than 90 days or more than 120 days after the pre-hearing conference concludes. So we will keep working our way up this. So that means that the hearing may take place in late June through August. That's what we're shooting for right now. Things are rolling. The hearing has to happen in the Basin of Origin. We talked about venues, and it's still yet to be determined. We would like to get a venue determined in March 3rd when we meet with the judge. We tossed out Great Bend, Dodge City, and Wichita. Probably they're all in the Basin of Origin. Melissa is checking out some venues for us to determine. This thing's probably going to last more than a week. The hearing, it's going to be a pretty intensive affair. So we need a room that can accommodate the judge and the proceedings and the attorneys and all of the equipment and anybody that wants to be a part of that. So when I give you an update next month, I will have hopefully a more detailed update on when the hearing is going to take place, where it's going to be. And then the only other thing I had to add was, if I didn't mention it before, I am working with the attorneys, or not the attorneys, the engineers, on the design contract, which will be to the attorneys very quickly, and we're still shooting for that late April, first part of May to get it in front of you guys for approval. And I would stand for questions if you have any.
I don't have any questions, but Toby, I know you were invited to speak just a little bit before the meeting. I want you to brag on Hayes a little bit, to kind of explain to the community what you're doing.
So the House of Representatives has had a water committee for 3 years now. And at the House Water Committee on Tuesday, Chairman Minix, Representative Jim Minix from Scott City, he asked the members of the committee if there were any presentations they would like to hear before the committee stops meeting at the, I think, end of March or first part of April. And so Representative Lindsey Vaughn, who's the ranking minority member, she suggested that they have a hearing on water conservation from the city of Hayes, because she knows that Hayes is very innovative in their water conservation efforts, and I think Holly's Did Holly leave? Oh, there she is. And she talked to Holly, Jeff, and I, and the mayor at the Governor's Water Conference too. So anyway, she suggested that they hear from the city of Hayes. So I received an invite from the committee organizer right before the meeting. So March 14th, I believe, is when I'm going to go down and give them an update. So I'll be working with Holly to put something good together.
Thank you.
It's certainly not lost on me or any of us, Toby, what precedent-setting activity we're in the middle of. I think all eyes are going to be on us, and particularly on you. We're really proud how you represent this community and your knowledge about the water issues and how you've done it mostly on your own. It's appreciated, and I think we're going to see some big changes in the state and probably going to be the cause of those changes. So that's appreciated.
Thank you. That's all I had.
We got progress. Thank you, Joe. Who wants progress? Deputy?
Deputy.
Needs a badge.
Deputy dog.
We get him a badge.
Yeah.
Please do.
We'll get that done.
Lord Davis got one.
That was quick. That was really quick.
Hope police don't put that on the. Good evening, or good afternoon, Colin Belzer, Deputy City Manager. And for Public Works Progress Report, stormwater crews performed work in a drainage ditch to repair a severely eroded area along General Custer adjacent to Reservation Road. On February 16th, the snow event, Service Division crews were out starting at 3:30 a.m. Began plowing and clearing roads for the overnight snow. Crews used 45 overtime hours, 28.5 yards of sand and salt, 22,350 gallons of brine, and 119 gallons of fuel for that event. They've been repairing some water main break street repairs. Here's one on Holmes Road. And now that the Vine Street project is complete, Service Division staff was able to complete the Public Works entrance off Vine Street and install the new signage. Planning and Development Superintendent Curtis Dinas spoke to Professor Nathan Howard's construction planning class at Fort Hays. He spoke about city planning, zoning, permitting, and GIS system. Curtis has done this many times in the past, and he's already been asked to go again next year. Area first responders were invited for lunch at Holy Family Elementary School. And the donor recognition display at the Arc Park has been completed. Park staff installed donor benches at Seven Hills Park or the Arc Park. A total of 9 benches were installed, 2 at the playground's loading and unloading zone, 3 at the west entrances to the playground and splash pad, and 1 in the playground's interior. Park staff have been working to remove trees that are either dead or in very poor condition. Trees have been removed in parks at the golf course, south of the Pteranodon.
Yes.
Staff cleared snow from city sidewalks, multi-use paths, and parking lots. And city staff have been working with Frank Leo, coach of the Hayes Larks, on the installation of a new aluminum fence with gateway arch and limestone pillar. So city staff are in the process of building the structural supports needed for those footings prior to the limestone pillars being installed.
Can I ask a question about that, Colin?
Sure
Does
can.
it cost a lot of money to sandblast all that limestone? Oh, here comes Jeff.
I'm glad you're here, Jeff Law.
And you go back to that slide.
There you go.
Because it looks really bad. But
Yeah.
it could look really good with that new
It-
fence
it's-
on it. And
It's a difficult conversation because by removing those lichens that are on there, it actually exposes that rock.
exposes it. Mhm.
So really, if you do that, you should seal it, and then that seal becomes a every 3-year process.
Oh, that's
So it's an ongoing cost. I agree with you. It'd look much nicer if it was sandblasted, but we were after the fact advised about this as far as the pool, because when
Right.
we built the aquatic park. I had a conversation with a gentleman that is very knowledgeable in limestone that said you probably shouldn't have done that. So, but it was sealed and we're maintaining it.
What does it cost to seal it?
I don't know. I'd have to look at that.
Send
It's,
me an email.
yeah, it's, but anyway, that would be my,
Thank you.
I would not
Thank you.
recommend it.
Those lichens are like grass. It's the ground cover that
ground
stops the
cover.
erosion.
Yeah,
like that.
what he said.
Staff have been completing playground inspections and repairs. Department of Water Resources, staff assisted Burns and McDonnell with well level measurements and collection of water samples at the R9 Ranch recently. On February 6th, Stacy Minson and Holly Dickman were asked to do an interview on K-State's Agricultural Today radio show to talk about efforts in promoting water quality and water conservation in Hayes. This interview was held in Manhattan and will be heard all over the state, wherever you hear the K-State Ag Network. Water resource maintenance crews repaired a water leak at 7th and Park. In CVB, staff participated in the Tourism Industry Association of Kansas Destination State House in Topeka, where tourism professionals meet with legislators to show the importance of tourism to the state's economy. Melissa Dixon actually serves as the president of the Tourism Industry Association of Kansas organization and welcomed the group. TIAC, the acronym for the organization, sponsored a lunch for legislators at the State House. And here's a picture with Hayes and Rooks delegates with Representative Barb Wassinger. Tallgrass Second Edition, the construction is substantially complete. This phase of the project by Heart of America Development Corporation and Grow Hayes adds 18 lots for affordable homes to be built. The project is funded through a rural housing incentive district established in June of 2020. And in HR, they provided CPR and first aid training to employees. This is something that's offered annually, and any employee may sign up. Questions?
Good stuff. Thank you. He's happening.
Save the best for last.
Madam President, yeah.
Good afternoon, Melissa Dixon from the Convention and Visitors Bureau with some events I want to be sure are on your radar for the month of March. First, Sternberg Museum's original exhibit, that means they created it, is called A Look Inside, and that'll be on display again through May 20th. So this actually uses medical diagnostic imaging to look inside some of their specimens. It is fascinating, and I encourage you to go check it out. The Fort Hays State Encore Series has a bonus show. This is an off-season event. The National Philharmonic Orchestra from the Ukraine. So if you have season tickets, you won't have this one. You'll need to go to the box office or get your ticket online. That is Wednesday, March 1st. The Chamber will sponsor a legislative coffee. So you can ask those legislators those questions for the things that are important to you. The doors will open at the Hayes Public Library at 8 with discussion starting at 8:30. That is March 4th. Also on March 4th, Hilton Garden Inn and Convention Center will hold a bridal fair. And the Fox Theater has a really big month in March with Colby Cooper, Maddie and Tay, the Eli Young Band, and then at the end of the month, a USO-style show, Letters from Home. And this stops in all 50 states, and the only place it stops in Kansas is the Fox Theater in Hayes. The second encore series that will be presented is called Forbidden Broadway. The goal of the show is to make you laugh, so they're making fun of Broadway shows. It should be really good. Heartland Gymnastics Tournament. This is a great example of something that's going to bring 350 to 400 athletes and their families to our community. So we actually sponsor a meal for that group. World Water Day Fun Fest. Holly just mentioned this, March 14th. At Sternberg Museum of Natural History. Special Olympics will be in Hayes again, March 17th through 18th, thanks to all the volunteers who will be out there for that. And then the Harlem Globetrotters, who haven't been here since 2019. They'll come back on their world tour March 28th. You can buy those tickets online as well. The Mike Hughes Sunflower Classic Memorial Race will be March 30th. Remember, kids 12 and under are always free to those races. And this weekend, I want to be sure you know, is state wrestling out at Gross Memorial. So our staff will be out there tomorrow serving meals to those coaches and administrators. This will be about 275 athletes and their families and their coaches and their administrators in town. Not only that, this weekend we'll also have the Hayes City Little Shootout youth basketball tournament at Hayes Rec. So if you ever want details on any of these things, check out our calendar at visithayes.com, and there's tons more on there.
Tell him that wasn't the Green Bay logo on there.
Sure looked like it.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cunningham.
I just want to comment that I think there are big things coming to our small community, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. And I think we're putting ourselves on the map. That's a good thing.
I would agree. Commissioner Berry.
So much, like such a great time to be in Hayes and be a commissioner. I just wanted, as was pointed out by Commissioner Musil and Commissioner Jacobs, I think the R9 project is not only precedent-setting and puts us on the map, but it does so in such a way that is, I think, really impressive in the sense that we're utilizing one part of the state to help a lot of people in another part of the state, but at the same time, with John and Chris involved, we're actually doing it in such a way that's going to benefit Edwards County as well as benefiting Ellis County and benefiting wildlife, benefiting the conservation of the land. So it's benefiting the land, the animals, the people of both counties, and setting a precedent that's going to be very huge for the state. And I think that's it's just truly amazing, and I'm very excited that it's going to actually happen, and we're going to get a chance to be a part of that. I also wanted to mention we had a chance to do a little tour of some apartments today, the Frontier Apartments. It's just spectacular. One of the things that I talked with somebody today that moved into a house in Tallgrass, and he said, he really loved it, really enjoyed it. And I think, housing is an issue for our area. It's not happening enough of it fast enough, but what's happening is really quality housing, and people are really enjoying the housing that they're moving into, and seeing what's happening with the housing that's being built is it's almost heartwarming. It feels really good for things that are happening in town. And then when you look at, having a Ukraine symphony here in Hayes is spectacular. It's something that you can't ask for more than that. But everything that's happening in Hayes, and I will even say that I'm now moved that I need to get a couple new toilets in my house so we can.
Here we
help.
go.
So I'll be
Here we
helping with the water conservation. So, all right, thank you.
I couldn't have said any of that better. I give me goosebumps. It's very heartwarming. It's very heartfelt what's going on in this community. Every day just gets better and better. Looking at those apartments today, if I could figure out how my husband could have a shop in that location, I would move in that second floor tomorrow. It is just beautiful work being done. It's going to be so well utilized in our community. Justin Pregant, who's doing the project, has done these in other communities, and the last two that he's done, he said one of them was within 4 weeks was full, and the other one within 6 weeks was full. I don't think this one will take that long. It's that nice and so beautifully located. Really excited about that. The other thing that is really heartwarming is, please, if you have the opportunity, you have time, go down and watch these young wrestlers at the university. I didn't ever really appreciate it until I had a grandson start. These kids work so hard, and it really is their life. And people that are wrestlers, I always think of Michael Burgess because he was a wrestler, and I wished he'd have been around here. But if you have the opportunity, just walk in down there for a while and sit and enjoy it. It's really good stuff. It's really good stuff. And I'm proud of all of you that presented tonight. I don't even know how to tell you how proud. Our goosebumps are back.
I'm just going to piggyback on Commissioner Barrick. Hayes depends on us for our medical, our schooling, and with this water project, like we've said, it's going to be good for the region, not just for us. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's not just for Hayes; it's for everybody around us. And like you just said, the guys running the show, Toby. We couldn't have better people running it.
Right.
I'm so excited. Like I said, my last 2 years on here is going to be exciting, and it's going to be fun. And just thank you guys in advance for everything you're going to do and what we all know how much you've been working on, Toby. So thank you very much. So, that, we're adjourned.